Today's stories are some doozies and definitely have some disturbing content, so as always, viewer discretion is advised. And if you have a story you'd like to send my way, go to astheravendreams.com and click the button to do so. And thank you. Back in 2017, I was in a pretty healthy relationship. Charlotte and I had been together for almost 3 years, and we were thinking about our future. We started looking at apartments together, and if things continued to go as well as they had been, I was going to save up to propose to her. However, even though a lot of the places we looked at were her choice, and she seemed so excited about this, she then threw a huge curveball at me. She told me that she had a great career opportunity in Oregon. We lived in Missouri. At first I thought, okay, a cross-country move is a huge step, but I was willing to do it if it meant a better life for the both of us. And even if it was kind of scary, moving out of state can also be exciting. But, much to my surprise, her plans did not involve me. She said she wanted to make a life for herself out there first, before she thought about a long-term relationship. And before I could even recommend it, she shot down the long-distance thing, saying that she couldn't guarantee that she wouldn't cheat. It hurt, but at least she was honest. I didn't know how to feel, though. I understand wanting to do what's best for your own good, but why even consider apartment searching then? Why lead me on to believe that we had a future together? Overall, I was definitely upset and heartbroken, but I moved on, and wished her the best. But I wasn't the only one caught off guard by this. Even some of her family found it odd. I was actually pretty good friends with her younger brother, and that's how I met her. And he was telling me how their parents were shocked that she just left everything behind. They were worried that maybe something sinister was going on, and forcing her to leave out of fear or something. But she assured everyone that that was not the case. She even showed us pictures of her new place and shared links to the place that she was going to be working for. It was an illustration company. Knowing that she was at least okay, we tried talking here or there, but I think overall it just made me feel worse, so we agreed it was best to cut ties. Now, it's been several years since this event happened. I've entirely moved on, and I'm happy. I decided to make some changes in my life too and got a new job. I met a girl named Valerie that worked at the same place as me, and I could instantly tell that there was a connection. We went on a date, hit it off immediately, and we've been together for about 4 years now. Charlotte wasn't even a thought in my mind. I was still good friends with her brother, but we hardly talked. But that was just life. So, needless to say, I wanted to propose to Val, and when I got hints from her and her friend, I took it as the go-ahead. Things definitely felt different, but in a good way compared to Charlotte. And to make it the second best day of my life, she said yes. At that point, life started moving pretty quickly, so when I was waiting in line to get coffee, I didn't notice the people around me until I heard my old nickname, making me look around. And that's when I saw Charlotte. We hugged, and I asked her what she was doing there. She explained that she was thinking about moving back, but was just visiting for a week. We quickly caught up for a bit, and she suggested that we grab a coffee or lunch together sometime. I agreed. I gave her another hug, and then I left. I even went home and told Val that I had run into her. We were very open with each other, and she knew of Charlotte, so she saw no issues with us catching up either. It was probably a few days after that we met up at the same place. We sat and talked about the past years. She showed me so many pictures of Oregon and places that she went, and even a few famous people that she met through her work. So, I asked her, since things were going so well, why she would ever want to move back. Her answer was vague, but said something about being able to work on her own time now and how she wanted to be closer to her family. Then she turned the conversation on me, and I told her that I was engaged. She looked surprised, but also said that she was happy for me. As we continued to talk, I noticed her becoming more and more hands-on. She would touch my shoulder, go down my arm. She would grab my hands and even rub my leg with her foot. It was a weird feeling, to say the least. It reminded me of who she was when we were together. I mean, I didn't feel anything as I was in love with Val, but the thought was in the back of my head. Was she trying to do something? Was this her flirting with me? I tried not to think about it, and we parted ways after a few hours. When I saw Val that evening, I even told her what had happened, and she found it odd. And then she mentioned that maybe there was a hint of jealousy from Charlotte, but otherwise, she wasn't really worried about it. So, again, we moved forward with our life, and I got random casual messages from Charlotte. My phone number never changed, after all. However, we started having strange events occur, and honestly never really connected them at the time. Val ended up moving to another location under the same business that we worked for, so we were no longer driving together. However, I had to take her to work one day because we went to leave one morning and her tire was flat. It wasn't like it just lost air or like there was a nail. I didn't even have to look for the cause. Towards the back side of the tire, there was a pretty big puncture in it. It wasn't a clear cut like a knife, but it wasn't mangled like the tire had just exploded. Not to mention, there was no additional damage to her car either. We were confused, but I just took her to work and told her that I would take care of it. Val had a pretty new car. I went with her to test it out, and it was only a few years old at the time. But she ended up having a pretty scary issue with it. We kissed each other goodbye one morning and left for the day, and when we got to work, we usually texted each other one more "have a nice day," with me usually being the first one, as my drive was shorter by about 15 minutes. When I didn't get a text back, I thought it was odd, but then just assumed that maybe she had forgotten or someone stopped her on her way in, both of which have happened before. So, after I got in and to my desk, I was prepared to text her when she called me hysterical. When I finally got her calmed down, she explained what happened. She said that she noticed her car hesitated a little when she shifted from reverse to drive, but ignored it as it soon went away. She thought maybe she imagined it, but made a mental note to tell me about it when she got to work. However, she didn't make it to work because, as she rolled up to a red light, her brakes kicked back and did nothing else. She went right through that intersection at about 30 miles per hour, instantly T-boning a van. Her airbags deployed, and she was obviously shaken up. She told me that the police were already there and that tow trucks were on their way, so I left work immediately to go be with her. The sight was pretty terrifying, and I felt so bad that she had to be in that situation, and alone to boot. The van had a woman and her toddler in it, but both were in their seatbelts and the kid in the car seat, so they were okay as well, just a bit shaken up. After the scene was cleaned up, we went home and she walked me through the situation again. It definitely sounded like something happened to the brakes, so after they towed the car back, I had someone come take a look at it to see if they could diagnose the issues. They were certainly able to, and they told us that one of the brake lines had been cut, and it was obviously done by someone that was not trying to replace a line or done by accident. He said you could see where they tried to cut it in multiple spots until they finally got through. We were terrified and confused. who would try to do this? Val was such a kind person, and it's not like she had any enemies that came to mind, so I just didn't know how to handle this. But then, she asked me if I thought Charlotte would do something like this. I also didn't see Charlotte as the type to do that, and while we talked, it was still very casual conversation. She shouldn't have even known where we lived. While I was questioning this, she brought something to my attention that she hadn't really told me about. She said that she had gotten a few calls at work, like they were transferred to her office line specifically looking for her, but when she would answer, they would just hang up. She thought it was weird, sure, but nothing scary or worth mentioning. Then, a few days prior to the accident, she got another call, and this time the person talked and said something with a slight giggle, like, "Nice car that you've got," and then hung up. I was horrified. I didn't want to think about Charlotte possibly doing this or even entertain the idea, but then I remembered the way that she acted when we met up. I honestly could not rule it out. So, I called her while Val was in the room so that we could hear her voice. I played it off like I thought that she called me and was returning the call, so it didn't last long, but I could tell by the look on Val's face that it was the same voice. I was furious. Why would she try to do this? She was the one that left me behind. Now, almost a decade later, she wants to ruin my life? As mad as I was, I started coming up with a plan. I bought a camera, and I had it set up to face our driveway. Then, I texted Charlotte asking to go get coffee again. When she showed up, I was not friendly at all like I was the first time. I asked her point blank if she was following or stalking my fiancé. She looked at me like I was crazy and denied it, but then I mentioned her stupid phone calls. She had this dumb grin on her face and actually said that she was just trying to have a little fun, but she was pretty easy to track down. She admitted to the calls, but would never fess up about the car. But after I chewed her out some, she started to show her true colors. She said that I was the one in the wrong, that I was supposed to wait for her to come back and have a relationship with her again and her only. That was never the case. She broke up with me. She ended it because she obviously had plans to hook up with other people. Why did I have to wait around for her? I was supposed to just be alone all those years? Hell no. I told her that she was crazy, and that she needed to leave us alone because we were happy, and that I would never be with her again, or even want to talk to her ever again. And I left that place feeling much better. I knew that we wouldn't really be able to take legal action, though, unless we had proof, and that was where the camera came in. I had this feeling that she was going to try something again, and I was right. It was 3 or 4 days later, and we checked the camera, as we do every time before we leave, and we were also sharing a car at the time. There she was, clear as day, walking around and inspecting my car. She then proceeded to pour something in my gas tank, wiped off the side and the cover, for prints, I assume, and then she climbed on top of the hood, pulled her pants down, and squatted. I'll let you fill in the rest. Charlotte had lost it. I had never seen that side of her, and I was frustrated, and obviously embarrassed, that I ever let her back into my life. Sorry the story ended up being so long, but to wrap it up, we pressed charges. We filed a restraining order, and were at least able to sue her for the damages to my car. As expected, we never heard from her again, and thankfully, her brother had no ill will towards me either. He said that she complained to him about me being engaged, and he basically told her to get the hell over it, like I did. because I had to move on. In the end, I think exes are better left at that. No friends, no contact, just old memories. Good or bad, I suppose. This recently came up again with a group of friends, so I decided I would share it with more people. About 4 years ago, I started dating a girl that I met online named Kendra. We matched, she messaged me first, and we actually hit it off pretty quickly. We started officially dating after the third date, and everything seemed fine. She was pretty fun to be around, even if we were just chilling at home. She was very open about herself and her past, which was nice that she was open, but it also made me let my guard down at first. I kind of felt bad for her. She explained how she didn't have a good childhood, as her mother was very abusive to her, and she didn't know her father, so she moved in with her boyfriend at the time when she was 16. She then explained how she got pregnant and how her boyfriend didn't want the kid and suffocated their baby at like 2 months old. She seemed pretty happy, but obviously had some issues, but definitely nothing I thought was a deal breaker or anything like that. But then, as the months went on, her stories became wilder and wilder. The stories that she would tell me were so bizarre that they were becoming hard to believe, especially when they were brought up in situations that would benefit her. Like, if I was planning on going somewhere with friends or family, she would make me feel bad about her childhood trauma and say that she didn't want to be left alone. When I did suggest that she come along with me to take my dog to the park or something, she would decline, saying that she couldn't walk or stand long due to her condition. She claimed that she'd had some kind of infection in her leg that permanently damaged the muscle or the bone, so she couldn't walk long distances. Yet, she dragged me to her friends' parties where she stood and danced for hours. She also claimed that she had to dye her hair black, she was a natural blonde, because the light color absorbed too much sunlight and was giving her a brain tumor. She said that this was directly from her doctor, and that she could have surgery and have her head shaved, or just keep dyeing her hair. Look, I don't know why I stayed with her at this point, but I guess I just thought that maybe she still had things to work out from her childhood, and that I could help her move on. I had no reason to not believe her about her family or her baby either, so I guess I tried to just move past it. However, it started to take its toll on me as she was starting to have an excuse for literally everything, and it was kind of obvious. When it was something she wasn't interested in or wanted to do, she had an excuse. And when I would tell her that I was still going without her, something would happen to try to stop me. For example, every Wednesday, me and a few of my friends would gather for game night. We were all off on Thursdays, so it was easier than on the weekends, and I never missed. I invited her to go, but she didn't want to. I told her that I would call her then whenever I left, and she would call me halfway through complaining that she wasn't feeling well, and that she wanted me to pick something up for her. Or that she needed me to take her to the ER because she'd had an accident, like cutting her finger or something. Even when I was with her and her friends, if I got into a conversation or we started having fun, she would be very dramatic and grab her leg or stomach or something. And of course, everyone would turn to ask her if she was okay. So now the attention was on her. Illnesses were a common tactic with her. I started to learn pretty quickly who she really was. The whole time that I was with her, she didn't even have a job. She pretty quickly started to leech on to me and my wallet, but I ignored it, believing that I was in love. When she didn't get her way, she threw a fit. and we would make up in the form of me buying her something. I really started to put things together and grew more suspicious when she invited me with her and her sister to lunch and shopping, because she thought of me as her bank account. Along with telling me that she was abused, she also claimed to be an only child. When I mentioned this to her, she became angry and wouldn't give me a straight answer, other than that I was obviously remembering things wrong. I know for a fact that she told me she was an only child, because she used the sob story many times that she had no one, because it was always just her with her abusive mother. So, being curious, I went with her to meet this mystery sister. To my surprise, they looked very much alike. I have siblings too, and I know we all look similar, but these two looked like they could be twins. And that's because they were. The only real difference was her sister had a darker blonde hair color and a mole above her eyebrow. Listening to them talk about things made me feel like a lot of the things Kendra had told me were a lie. There were things that her sister would even bring up, and she would get upset and say that she didn't want to talk about it. I caught both of them looking over at me at times, so after that day, I went home with a lot of questions, and I really debated on how to bring them up. Turns out, I wouldn't have to do much, as the next day, her sister sent me a message request on Facebook. She was kind, and it just started as a nice to meet you kind of thing. Then, after a few hours, she said that she had some questions for me. She asked me if Kendra had mentioned their childhood to me, and I said yes. But, after us both beating around the bush some, it was finally revealed that she was never abused. In fact, Kendra was the abuser. They were actually twins, and they did have a younger sister. Kendra would constantly attack both of them, and as a teenager, she had even hit her mom. Hell, her parents were married, and her dad was still alive. She was never kicked out, but rather she went to a juvenile detention due to threatening her little sister with a knife, and she never had a kid. Her sister apologized as she knew that she was a habitual liar and wanted to know what all I knew, or at least what I was told. I thanked her for being honest, and I took the rest of the day to really think about what to do. I finally got up the courage and told her that we needed to talk. I asked her if I could come over. I figured it would be easier to leave her place than kicking her out of mine. I went over and told her that I wanted to talk to her about some things that she had told me, and I confronted her about the lies. I told her that her sister had told me everything, and that I wanted to give her one last chance. I wanted to hear the truth from her, and I wanted to know why she would lie about any of it. Instead of coming clean, she just doubled down on the lies, and tried saying that that was her half-sister, and that she was just trying to take me from her. Her sister even told me that she would probably try that too. I told her that I'd had enough, and that we were done. If she couldn't be honest with me, then this was not going to work out. I guess one thing that I didn't really take into consideration, though, was when her sister mentioned that Kendra was the abuser. So, when I turned around to grab my jacket and leave, she started screaming and ran towards me, jumping on my back. We went back and forth like this, of me struggling to get her off of me. She had her legs wrapped around me and had a tight grip on my hair with one hand, while punching me in the head and shoulders with the other. I finally managed to throw myself backwards onto her kitchen floor, where she let go. But before I could get to my feet, I was hit in the head and knocked out cold. The next thing I remember were cops and an EMT standing over me in her house, asking me a bunch of random questions. Once they checked me out to make sure I was okay to stand, I was placed in cuffs and thrown in the back of a squad car. After being taken back to the station, I was finally questioned and given the opportunity to explain my side of things. I told them why I was there, how I knew Kendra, what led to me being on the kitchen floor, but I didn't know how I actually got there. They asked me if I had physically harmed her. I explained that other than pretty much just dropping her on the floor, as well as myself, I hadn't touched her. After a few hours, they finally let me go, but not before telling me how they got involved. Apparently, she hit me in the head with a meat tenderizing hammer, so they told me that I should still go to the hospital to check if I had a concussion afterwards. Then, they were called by a neighbor as she was running up and down the street outside screaming for help. She told them that I had barged into her place in a fit of rage after she broke up with me, and that I had attacked her. They checked us both out and took pictures, and since I had multiple marks on my back, head, shoulders, and face, and she had, well, not a single scratch or bruise, they seemed to believe me. They suggested that I stay away from her, though, and I promised that I would do just that. I went home and I talked to a few friends about what had happened, and even messaged her sister to let her know what she did. Kendra tried calling me a few times, but no, all to voicemail for her. She stopped trying pretty quickly, thank God, and I just moved on living to tell my crazy ex tale. Well, that is, until this past Christmas, when she actually tried to add me on Facebook. No, immediate block. My story starts back whenever I was 19 years old. As a lot of young girls do, I didn't have the best self-esteem, and I clung to people that showed interest in me, be it just platonic or romantic. This is when I met a man named Rich. He was about 12 years my senior, and at the time, I just saw him as a good friend. I was working at a local thrift store, and he came in there a few times, and in fact, I think I caused him to frequent there more often. He was always kind to me, and seemed to actually care. He would always ask how work was going, how my week had been. I was wanting to go to college, but I wasn't quite sure what I wanted to major in yet. When we were slow, he even talked about what I was interested in and tried to help me find my way. I had never really experienced this kind of attention, so I guess that I was falling for it. It started as me just hanging out with him after work, as friends. He had taken me out for dinner many times, and I even went to his house, as I was still living at home. My parents had even met him, and why they never questioned their 19-year-old daughter hanging out with a 31-year-old man was beyond me. Then, things turned romantic between us. I truly felt that I had found my prince, and that we would have this happily ever after life. At the age of 20, less than a year after we met, I became pregnant. He even assured me that he would always be there to take care of both of us. He welcomed me to move in with him officially, and even convinced me to quit my job, promising me that we would be financially fine. That way I could focus on being the best mom I could to our child. Everything was going as he promised, too. The whole time that I was pregnant, we were in that honeymoon phase. He did everything for me. He went to all of my appointments. He helped me when I was sick. He even catered to my silly cravings. Then, when our daughter Adelaide was born, I fell in love all over again. Even after she arrived, we were doing great. We were both happy, she was healthy, and we learned how to be the best parents that we could be together. We did have a few moments here or there, like when she would wake up throughout the night or when nothing we would do would seem to comfort her, but I just thought that was the nervousness and stress of being a parent. My grandmother, though, she's been the rock throughout my life, and she was on speed dial anytime I had concerns. Needless to say, she helped me through a lot. But things started slowly turning sour day by day, and it really broke me. It would start as Rich having to work late a lot, so I saw him less. When he would come home, he seemed to be in a bad mood or just really didn't want to talk about it. He was an electrical engineer, so I'm sure that it was stressful, as all jobs have their bad days, but he just never seemed to want to talk to me about anything anymore. Then, he started calling me to say that he wouldn't be home for dinner and telling me not to wait up for him. Again, he would claim it was all work-related, but I had my doubts when he finally arrived home at midnight, or even later, and just passed out on the couch. In fact, I started seeing him less and less as a whole. I would see him off in the mornings, but that was about it. Even on the days that he was off or had an event to go to, he did not want to be around me. He stayed out and he didn't have me go with him. He used to take me and Addie to his parents' place on occasions, but when I got ready to go once, he got mad at me for assuming and then left us there. It got to the point that the only time I ever left the house was to get the mail or occasionally get groceries after nagging him about being low. He failed to realize this because he was hardly home to eat with us. He became verbally abusive. He mocked me when I tried to ask him for the simplest thing or for any kind of intimacy from him. I craved our conversations, our silly little inside jokes, or even just holding each other on the couch. I became severely reclusive and depressed. I hardly talked to my friends or family. I certainly didn't get to go anywhere or do anything because I didn't even have my own money. Hell, I even tried talking to him about going to school so I could help to pay for things, and he wouldn't have it. He would shoot it down every time, saying that it was too late for that now, and that I was stupid for even considering it. As I mentioned earlier, the only thing other than my little girl that kept me going was my grandma. I talked to her about everything, and when I stopped calling her weekly or seemed to want to talk very long, she surprised me with a visit, and brought her homemade chicken casserole and some groceries. I broke down and told her what had been going on, and she told me that I needed to give him an ultimatum and stick to it. Rich was definitely verbally abusive, but never physically so, and she definitely gave me the strength to do it. To wrap up the sob story, I guess, the ultimatum kind of did not go in my favor. Or at least not how I would have wanted. He kicked me out. He told me that I was just ungrateful and that I could leave. I tried talking to him about Addie, but that's when he dropped it on me that he couldn't care less about her, as he didn't believe that she was his kid. He was my first serious relationship, and I was still a virgin when I met him. Heartbroken, I packed up a few things that I had and that were important to me and all of Addie's things, and I moved in with my grandparents until I got back on my feet. Fast forward about 4 years, and I'm still with my grandparents, but we're all happy. My grandfather had an accident, so I decided to stay to help my grandma take care of him. They loved spending time with Addie and watching her while I was in school. Yes, I did finally start school again, and I was working part-time and I loved it. I was happy with my life, even as a single parent. Addie even started going to pre-K, and I would pick her up before I went to class in the evenings. That's where things went downhill again. The school that Addie was going to was very big on security, and that's why I chose them. So, when I got a call from them saying that someone who was not authorized attempted to pick her up early, they called me immediately. Only my grandparents and my sister were on the authorized pickup list. I left work and went to the school when I saw cop cars everywhere. I had to show my ID and be checked before they even let me in. Little did I know that the cops were actually there because of me. The principal described the guy that attempted to get Addie, and when they refused to let them, saying that they would have to call and ask me first, the person stormed out. And that's when they called me. Shortly after that, they had a lockdown as they saw the same guy walking the fence of the play area where the kids were about to be released for recess. Rightfully so, they feared that he may try to do something to the kids, or even abduct Addie. As you may have guessed it was Rich. I hadn't gotten as much as a phone call from him in years, and here he was, trying to take our kid from school, our kid that he said he wanted nothing to do with. They had me identify him later that day as they caught him hanging around the school and had him in custody. After a lot of back and forth with him and the cops, it came down to him wanting a relationship with his daughter. Now, nearly 5 years later, he suddenly cares. I hated it. I felt like it was him trying to control me again, but once again, my grandma talked me through it and said to keep an open mind. There didn't need to be anything between us other than being parents to the same child. But if he's changed, maybe he could actually be a good father. So, after a lot of lawyer talk, we worked out supervised visitations. If I wasn't present, my sister and her husband were there. If he would try to take her from the school, I didn't trust that he wouldn't try to take her if they were alone. As expected, he used this time to try to get back with me. When that didn't work, he would become angry and end the visitation. When my sister and brother-in-law went, he brought another girl with him and was too busy with her to pay attention to Addie. I guess it was just an attempt to make me jealous, I guess. One of the last times that I saw him, it was just me again. And when I finally put my foot down telling him that I was there for Addie, not him, and that I didn't want a relationship with him, he leaned in and tried to kiss me. When I pulled away, he slapped me, saying that it would be the biggest mistake that I have ever made and how I wasn't thinking about our daughter. I grabbed Addie, who had been playing alone at the park, and we left. I was ready to get a stern talking to for ending his visitation early, but I never got a call. This was obviously his main motive, as, once again, I never heard from him. He stopped showing up to visitations. He wouldn't answer my calls, and even his lawyer gave me the whole, "don't call me, I'll call you" line, and that was it. It's been 3 years since then, and I know it probably sounds bad and selfish, but I hope that I never hear from him again. Addie deserves to have a father in her life that cares for her, and not just be used as a way to get to me. Until then, my grandfather has honestly filled that role really well, and I can't thank him enough. I just have that fear in the back of my mind that he's going to show up one day and attempt to talk to her again, and I hope that she's never in a position to allow that to happen. So that, my friends, was this week's Saturday video. A collection of scary ex stories about crazy exes. The exes weren't always crazy, they just became crazy once they became exes. Though that is probably an incorrect statement. They may have always been crazy. Yeah. All that said, scary collection of stories. Yeah, definitely scary. I cannot honestly relate to any of these. I don't have any crazy exes. I'm not going to say all of my exes are sane, were sane, however you want to put that. Not that I've had an ex, Patience and I have been together since 2007, so, I don't exactly have, many exes to tell stories about. Considering we're, 30 and 31, 2007 is a long time. It's almost 16 years, so, yeah, anyways. Majority of our lives we've been together, so I can't personally relate to these. unfortunately or fortunately, I'm going to say it's fortunate, whatever. Hopefully, you all enjoyed these stories. If you did, hopefully, you're willing to click that little thumbs up button. And if you're willing to do that, then hopefully, you mean it. I don't know where I was going with that. If you're new to the channel and liked what you heard and want more content like this 3 times a week, hit that subscribe button. If you are feeling ever so bold, leave me a comment down below in the comments section. It can be about anything you want it to be. I will happily accept all comments. I don't know. I appreciate the comments, honestly. I guess other bit of news, I think I can officially say that I've made it. I've officially become a successful channel. There was pointed out to me that there was a channel that was stealing my content, which is against YouTube's policy and is technically copyright infringement, and I have, as such, copyright struck that channel 3 times, 4th is pending. I need to go through the rest of their videos. I was told I was in 9 of their videos. So, this is actually a big thing, if you guys don't know. For some reason, us narrators, Let's Read, Being Scared, Darkness Prevails, all the big ones, including me, apparently, have their stuff frequently stolen and put on other channels so people can try to profit off of it. If you ever see that, please contact the owner of that content. If that's me, if that's Joel/Let's Read, if that's Dane or Being Scared, if that's Swamp, Darkness, let us know so we can take appropriate action, please. Because we all put a lot of work into this, and having our stuff stolen, it's not cool. But on the other end of that, I feel like that means I've made it, right? Someone stole my content to try to make money off of it because they thought it was good enough to build their audience off of their, faking it's me. So, I don't know. I'm happy. It kind of made my day. I'm like, hey, nice, I've made it. I am something now, right? Irrelevant. Let's move on. My friends, I hope you're having a great weekend. Hope you have a great rest of your weekend. Hope to see you on the next video. But until then, remember, you are loved, you are valid, you are important, you're the best you that you can be. Never let anyone tell you otherwise. And my friends, until I see you again, much love and sleep well.